The Marvel Cinematic Universe has so many characters that, even after Thanos wiped out half of them, the roster was still pretty full. It can be hard for the casual fan to keep track, but don't feel too bad if you've forgotten some names or details along the way.
Pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever.
Even Marvel seems to forget or completely change important aspects of their characters' lives. We'll reveal some surprising characters who have been retconned during their time in the MCU. Peter Parker. Oh, Tom Holland. He's so amazing at portraying Spider-Man, but he's constantly revealing excess Marvel information. As we all know that for a long time, Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man, which means he couldn't appear in the MCU. But after some negotiating, we finally got to see our favorite web-slinger in the MCU in Captain America: Civil War. He fit in so well, it felt as though he'd always been a part of the universe, and according to Tom Holland, he has. During Iron Man 2, there's a moment when a young boy wearing an Iron Man mask stands up to hammer drones before being saved by Iron Man. According to Tom Holland, that boy was actually a young Peter Parker. This was clearly not the original intent when Iron Man 2 was being filmed, but hey, we'll take anything that supports our personal headcanon, especially when it involves that super sweet relationship between Tony Stark and Peter Parker. Loki. When we first met the MCU version of Loki, all his evil deeds were, well, not very evil.
He transformed himself into a snake, and he transformed back into himself, and he was like, yeah, it's me!
Yes, he tried to usurp his brother's throne, trick Odin into banishing Thor, and stirred up trouble with the Frost Giants, but it all seemed like a cry for help more than anything.
I could have done it, Father! For you!
Poor guy just wanted the Allfather to approve of him, which, spoiler alert, never happened. Saying Loki's behavior escalated between his appearance in Thor and the Avengers is an understatement. Loki went from being the black sheep of the Asgardian royal family to raining terror and death on the mostly helpless citizens of Earth. It made us wonder if Loki was really himself during the Battle of New York, or if he was being influenced by the Mind Stone contained within his scepter. Years later, our faith in Loki was validated by Marvel, who confirmed on their website that Loki was indeed being influenced by the Mind Stone. It amplified his feelings of anger and jealousy, and fueled his less than heroic actions during the Avengers. Hawkeye. Clint Barton is an interesting character. During the Avengers, Clint and Natasha Romanoff were introduced as partners with a long history together. It was clear the two were quite close, trusted one another implicitly, and that there was definitely romantic undertones to their interactions. During Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Natasha was spotted wearing an arrow necklace, which many interpreted as a nod to her relationship with Clint Barton, who has an entire family. Yeah, wife, kids, the whole deal. Initially, Clint Barton has been described as a loner, who is clearly interested in having whatever the S.H.I.E.L.D. equivalent of an office romance is with Natasha. But all of a sudden, it turned out that he had a family so secret, are we sure he even knew about them? What was his family doing while he was under Loki's mind control in the Avengers? Why doesn't Clint bring his daughter to Bring Your Daughter to Work Day? According to Avengers Age of Ultron director Joss Whedon, he liked the idea of giving a superhero like Hawkeye the secret of a normal life. Still, there are plenty of fans who felt this particular revelation came out of nowhere. Gamora. Everyone knows that Gamora is Thanos' favorite child, and in Guardians of the Galaxy, we learn that Gamora is supposedly the last surviving member of the Zaborare people. We learn Thanos has adopted her, and by adopted, we mean kidnapped. Her biological parents met their end at the hands of Thanos, along with the rest of her people. Only that story had completely changed by the time Avengers: Infinity War came around. In the movie, Gamora talks about how Thanos' plan has always been to destroy half of all life in the universe, not all of it. And when we flash back to her home planet, we learned he only wiped out half of her kind. Hey, we're a planet half full kind of people here. Thanos even confirms to Gamora that the survivors are now flourishing, and that their conditions are far better than when Gamora was a child. Gamora may have felt lonely prior to becoming a Guardian of the Galaxy, but it turns out she had a home to go back to all along. Tony Stark. There was a time when Marvel Studios thought the Incredible Hulk movie was a sure thing, and that it'd be far more successful than Iron Man. In their defense, they were banking on the fact that even non-comic book fans were well aware of the Hulk. We're not going to say it was a horrible movie, but it's not particularly noteworthy, and since Mark Ruffalo is now Bruce Banner instead of Edward Norton, most of us just kind of pretend it doesn't exist. But in addition to the actor portraying Bruce Banner changing, there was a loose plot point in the movie that never came to fruition. At the end of The Incredible Hulk, Tony Stark had a meeting with General Ross to talk about putting a team of superheroes together. Later, we got a Marvel one-shot called The Consultant, which tried to explain this interaction as Tony Stark trying to deter Ross from getting involved. Okay, Marvel, we're sure that's what happened. Thor. For a long time, the lines between science and magic in the MCU were pretty confusing. We're not here to talk about science versus magic, though. In Thor, the god of thunder learned the value of sacrifice and putting the needs of others above his own selfish desires. Part of this development involved destroying the Rainbow Bridge in order to stop Loki from destroying Jotunheim. Thor might like destroying things, but this meant he wouldn't be able to return to Earth to visit his new girlfriend, Jane Foster. What a sad and poignant movie moment. At least until Thor showed up on Earth in the Avengers. All we got by the way of an explanation was that dark magic was used to send Thor to Earth. And during Avengers Infinity War, this dark magic was also used to explain how Heimdall sent Hulk to Earth after being attacked by Thanos. Dark magic may sound scary, but it seems more like a convenient, if inconsistent, plot device than anything else. Maybe we need some science to figure this out, huh? Rhodey. One of the frequent complaints about the early days of the MCU was it seemed that few actions had long-lasting consequences. Thor destroys the bridge, which would have let him go to Earth, but no big deal because magic. And then, of course, we have all the various characters who have died, and it turns out they were alive the whole time. Captain America Civil War was a massive movie event, and comic book fans were out for blood, and by blood we mean comic book accuracy. The storyline this movie was based on wasn't short on casualties, and many fans expected to see this reflected in the MCU. Instead, we saw Rhodey suffer from a serious and debilitating injury. It was definitely emotional, especially for his BFF Tony Stark, but if there was one thing Tony knows how to do, it's how to throw money at a problem to fix it. And what do you know? Rhodey went from being grievously injured to being totally fine in Avengers Infinity War. In a world that hasn't shied away from mental ailments, it seems strange Marvel got Rhodey back on his feet so fast after such an extreme physical injury. Korg. Most people consider Thor Ragnarok to be the strongest entry by far out of the 3 standalone Thor movies, and it's not hard to see why, as director Taika Waititi managed to bring a hilarious breath of fresh air to the franchise. He also wasn't afraid to get involved, and ended up taking on the role of everyone's favorite Kronan Korg. But if you thought Korg looked a bit familiar, you're not wrong, unless you're mistaking him for an actual pile of rocks, because while that's understandable, it's just incorrect.
You're made of rocks.
Perishable rock. Oh, okay, another one. Go on.
In Thor the Dark World, we saw Thor fighting a Kronan, who looks suspiciously like our good friend Korg. According to the DVD commentary, director Alan Taylor claims that Kronan was supposed to be Korg, despite never being named in the movie. But Taika Waititi had plans for the character, whose personality he based on some Polynesian nightclub bouncers he had met. So he just conveniently pretended Korg was still alive, and that Thor had struck down some unnamed Kronan during the Dark World. During Ragnarok, Korg does talk about his mother having a boyfriend. Maybe she was forced to find love again after losing her husband to the God of Thunder. Okay, that probably won't be retconned into the MCU, but if it happens, remember, you heard it here first. Iron Man. Tony Stark has had a hero's journey that's been unorthodox to say the least. He started out as a totally self-absorbed billionaire, but after being kidnapped and realizing the effects that his warmongering had on the world, he just became a regular self-absorbed billionaire. Hey, it's progress, people. Being a superhero isn't always easy, and Tony knows that better than most people. During Iron Man 3, we saw him struggle to cope with what he experienced during the Avengers. He's stricken with panic attacks and struggles with trauma and feeling powerless. We learned that his fear inspired him to construct many new suits of Iron Man armor for pretty much every contingency possible, but when he decides to take a break from being a superhero, he destroys all of his armor. Apparently, he started rebuilding immediately after the camera stopped rolling, because he was ready to suit up again for Avengers Age of Ultron and has no shortage of costume changes. Don't get us wrong, we're glad he kept on fighting the good fight, but what was the point of destroying all of that perfectly good armor? Probably all those explosions, I guess. Stan Lee. Everyone knows that the late great Stan Lee was responsible for creating some of our favorite Marvel characters and starring in some of the best cameos of all time.
I'm going to miss him.
Yeah.
Every time we'd head to the theater to see our latest entry into the MCU, we'd look forward to seeing when Stan Lee would pop up and what he'd be doing. But we all know that if you exist in the MCU for longer than 10 seconds, someone's gonna come up with a fan theory about you, and that's exactly what happened here. Fans wondered if it was possible that Stan Lee was playing one single character across all of the different MCU movies. But what kind of multi-talented, always-present character would he be? Many suspected he might actually be a Watcher. As the name implies, these beings pretty much enjoy sitting back and observing humanity. This would explain why Stan Lee always seems to be nearby whenever something interesting is happening. While the Watcher is a bit unconfirmed, We did see him interacting with a group of actual Watchers in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Kevin Feige claimed that he and Guardians director James Gunn loved this fan theory about Stan Lee playing the same character so much, they decided to incorporate it into the MCU and make it retroactively factual. What do you think about these moments when Marvel Studios chose to retcon their characters? Were they good decisions, or was it a simple lack of foresight? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for more great videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.